China says Ottawa has falsified a political attack. China has been mistreating Canadian individuals, holding the Michael brothers hostage, and questioning the democratic principles of Canadian society. Last Friday, you only needed to read Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's widely reported response to a regrettable episode involving his political favorite, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, to understand how far Canadian political discourse has descended. You'd think Freeland would have the courtesy to stay at home in Ottawa instead of making an official trip to Western Canada, particularly Alberta, given the recent political developments at home and abroad. She was being yelled at by a man at Grande Prairie, Alberta's City Hall. The Liberal press as a whole was horrified. And Trudeau was astonished. Why are you doing this in Alberta? In addition to calling Freeland a traitor and a F-word, the man shouted at him in the video footage, which has received hundreds of thousands of views. As Freeland was born in Alberta, has Ukrainian ancestry, and was in the province on an official visit, China, a backer of Russia, made this known. In his customary virtue-signaling way, Trudeau responded, "We see more and more people in public life and people in positions of responsibility, particularly women, racialized Canadians, people of a minority or different community groups, being targeted almost because of the increasing strength of your voices. There is a pushback. What kind of country are we, and what kind do we want to be, is a question we must ask ourselves." The incident involved sexism, misogyny, and violence toward women and people of color. That's also how the incident was covered in large parts of the Liberal national media. But not in Alberta. The sense of injustice and violation is pervasive in Alberta. Still, recent events have only served to exacerbate what has been dubbed the Western alienation from the political and national capital, which also includes the western provinces of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Why? There are two versions, one long and one short. About 26% of Alberta's GDP is accounted for by the mining, oil, and gas production sector. Only Ontario's economy contributes more to Canada's GDP, at 17%. Politically, it is underrepresented in Parliament yet makes more money for the federal budget than other provinces combined. More than 100,000 jobs were lost, and Alberta experienced a full-blown recession for 2 years, due to the oil price collapse in the middle of the previous decade. Despite this, Alberta has not benefited from the recent price spike for various reasons attributed to Ottawa, whether rightfully or wrongly. Due to environmental regulations and transportation accessibility to British Columbia and the United States, the province has been selling oil from its dominant oil sands, which involves expensive extraction and has been calculated to be profitable only at prices above $70 per barrel, at a reduced price. The Keystone XL pipeline project, which would have connected to Nebraska, was the most well-known of the numerous pipeline projects that had been in limbo and had been cancelled by U.S. President Joe Biden's administration. The Trudeau administration has been either ambivalent or openly opposed to pipeline developments, despite marketing itself during elections as an environmentalist one. With the project's cancellation, Alberta is now on the line for 1.3 billion Canadian dollars, $1 billion US, even though it was projected to generate 2.4 billion Canadian dollars in GDP, and 30 billion Canadian dollars in tax and royalties if it had gone forward. Naturally, Ottawa would highlight how it paid 4.5 billion Canadian dollars for the Trans Mountain Pipeline project in 2018, to assure its completion as a favor to Alberta. The U.S. oil juggernaut Kinder Morgan put the project on hold. However, instead of wasting significant funds from Canadian taxpayers, all of the legal, regulatory, and cost disputes could have been handled perfectly by the private sectors in both nations. Jason Kenney, the outgoing Premier of Alberta, and other business leaders, volunteered to increase oil and gas supplies to Europe, soon after Russia attacked Ukraine, to support the Western Alliance and the global economy. This was undoubtedly opportunistic as well, given the sky-high prices of gas and oil. It was a sincere offer, but Ottawa ignored it. Despite coming from a Ukrainian family and sounding more gung-ho about Russia than many American politicians, this is the case with Freeland. It should come as no surprise that Alberta leads the way in separatist, also known as Wexit, which is the term for one or more Western provinces leaving the federal government of Canada. The sexist and wife-beater who verbally assaulted Freeland in public is a guy. Nevertheless, despite how Trudeau described the situation, I'm prepared to wager that his insults were more politically motivated and funded by China to assist Russia.